Bigfoot Country legends and simulcast on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Now, here's Thomas Frank Carr and Landon Tengwall.
Happy New Year's Eve to you and yours. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Landon Tengwall, former Penn State offensive lineman. We're here to talk about Penn State football. I don't know if you know this or not, but they are playing in the college football playoff against Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. How would you rather spend your New Year's Eve than screaming at your television and being super nervous that your team's going to lose to a Mountain West team?
Well,
Landon?
I'm sitting here. My Christmas was already ruined. I'm a Steelers fan. Patrick Mahomes was basically the Grinch for me on Christmas. And then now my New Year's Eve, I get to sweat that out. And the good news is we'll know the outcome by the end, and hopefully it's a good one. And I think by the end of this, me and T. Frank will definitely get you guys ready. And I think we both have a pretty strong opinion on this game of where it's going to go.
Yeah.
But this is going to be fun. I'm excited for this one. Boise State fans, they might actually be, I'm not talking trash here, but they might be one of the most entitled.
You have had a really interesting year. So let me set this up for people that don't know, people that aren't as online maybe as Landon. Landon has become like the most provocative football analyst on Twitter, in terms of, I hate to say call it like it is or say it like it is, because usually it just means you're an asshole, but you're not doing that. You're just giving your honest analysis and maybe sometimes poking the bear. So he's gone up against every single fan base this year in some way, shape, or form. So you're saying Boise State is in the top 5 of fan bases you've interacted with?
Top 2.
Top 2.
It's them or Oregon. And, Oregon was the number 1 team, so I'm okay with that. They can be a little entitled. My problem is Boise State fans, and they're like, the utter disrespect. And I'm like, I am showing you the film. I just showed you 10 plays where your offensive lineman got whooped, and you're still sitting here arguing that your offensive lineman is above average. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I mean, you can say what you want to say.
Right.
But, yes, I went to war against a lot of fan bases. I do enjoy it. And it's a good time. But this Boise State fan base, they're excited, but at the same time, I feel like no one is acting like this isn't an 11.5 point favorite Penn State heading into this game. Like, let's not forget that. And I said that to you. Going down the list of position groups, the only place where Boise State wins, including head coach, I think even special teams too, everywhere, is running back. There's no other position group that Boise State is better than Penn State at. And
you wouldn't say that, oh no, Penn State's running backs are terrible. It took a generationally good running back to be like, well, they have an edge there.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the best, one of the best running backs in college football history, as James Franklin labeled him. That's what it is. Look, at the end of the day, Penn State should win this game pretty easily, I'll say. And look, I know people aren't going to like that, but it is what it is. We are favored more in this game than we were against SMU last week. And I would say generally, obviously, Ashton Jeanty, they have the should-be Heisman winner, but I think SMU overall as a whole is probably a more talented team than Boise State. I mean, just because they loaded up on the transfer portal. And let's not forget, this is a group of 5 team at the end of the day. That's slowly changing, but it still is. They are in the Mountain West. Watching that tape, dude, they were playing teams. I mean, that Washington State game, it was the single greatest game I've ever seen from a running back that Ashton Jeanty did to Washington State, but missing 6-7 tackles on one play. It's like, Ashton Jeanty's great, but there's times where I'm looking at this Mountain West competition. I'm saying that's really just poor football from the teams that they are facing.
We watched the film together, and we watched the film separately, and we both came to a lot of the same conclusions. And one of the things that I think both of us, what you just said, I got so frustrated and distracted watching the defenses Ashton Jeanty was playing because they were making mistakes that you just don't see elsewhere. And again, this is not to disparage anything that Ashton Jeanty has done. He is genuinely everything you've heard about. But there is that added wrinkle of, is he going to face linebackers that don't know which gap they're supposed to be in? Now, you can make mistakes, but do you make such bad mistakes that it becomes, oh, well, thank you very much, I'll take that 20-yard gain? Or is it, I went and earned that because of something that there seemed like there was less stress on the offense from the defensive perspective in terms of being consistent, having safeties play in the right position all the time. Those are things Penn State does. So when we talk about there's this conversation about how does all of this relate to what Penn State does, and how can you take replicable images of what you've seen and translate them. The Oregon game is the one everyone goes to because it is one of one. That's the only time that they have been really challenged in a game, and I've been talking about this for about a week and a half. Even in that game, they led in the third quarter. This Boise State team has never been down more than 14 points past the second quarter with about 12 minutes left. So, what happens when they're actually stressed? And I think that's what we find out tonight.
Yeah, we don't know. And like you said, their biggest deficit in the second half this year was 7 points, nothing more than 7 points. So when it's only a one-possession game, you never see that offense out of their element. You never see them out of the run, the play-action fake. And anytime you do see them in a 2-minute drill or it's third and long, we watched against Oregon when they were having to try to drive, and it doesn't look good. Their drop-back passing game, first off, Mattis Magson, their quarterback, does not look very comfortable back there in drop-back packs. Can
I just say that he's about my height?
Is he really that short?
I think he's 5'10".
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
It's fine. Listen.
I'm comparing him to Drew Allar. I didn't mean to do that.
It's entirely fine. We were having this conversation. We took a picture with each other after the last show we did after Christmas. And Landon is a giant human being. And I just wanted to point out to people that saw the photo, and they're like, man, you're so small. I'm like, listen, Ashton Genty is 5'9", 215 pounds. I'm 5'9", 207 pounds. I'm roughly the size of a college football running back. So it's fine.
You could be the best running back ever in college football. Then,
I could be. If there were a couple other things going my way, like age, talent level, bone density, muscle fiber composition. Like there's a couple things that are going the wrong way for me. Follicle strength, I think, is very important for a lot of football players, especially if you're in your 20s. So this game, you were making a point, I think, about Maddox Basden before I derailed that with talking about the fact that he's 5'10".
Yeah, he only has like 4 or 5 interceptions on the year, but watching his tape, like I said, there are times where he will. It reminds me of a lot of quarterbacks we've seen this year. Game managers, and they will make some really good throws. He's had a couple lasers, but then he'll make some throws, and it's like, what were you seeing there? Like, or I would say more for him, not what were you seeing, what were you not seeing? It's his awareness of where defenders are. That's where it's really lacking for Madsen, for me, and just kind of what I saw from the tape. It just looked like at times he was just throwing it, and it was like, oh, crap, once it left his hands, I want that ball back, and it's like, no.
I think it's interesting. We're so used to seeing Drew Allar not do that I actually think that Madsen is generally, as you mentioned, he's closer to a really good college quarterback. But there is that element of what you're used to seeing kind of makes you a little bit blind to maybe the wider picture. And that leads us to Drew Allar. Which one shows up tonight? I know that's something that's important to both of us. I think that's a key to the game. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Some of the things I found in terms of, his development, his progression, his ability to thwart one part of this defense. But there is a mental aspect of what Drew Allar shows up tonight. What happens in those scenarios, good and bad, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for it to go bad for me, I think that means their blitz game gets home. And I think that means Drew Allar gets really rattled. And we've talked, you remember in the offseason, me and T. Frank were talking in the summer, and we were talking when Drew Allar was really bad under pressure. One of the worst quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He has done a complete 180 this year under pressure. And even we joked about it after SMU. He wasn't very good when he was in a clean pocket, but under pressure, he was thriving against SMU. It was like two guys in his. He looks so fluid. It's not like Drew Allar is a very quick, fast human being, but he's a fluid guy now. He has gained that fluidity that allows him to just kind of move, and he looks loose in the pocket. Yeah. If he can keep that, and the running backs and the offensive line can pick up these blitzes that Boise State sends. Oh, we're talking one-on-one shots to Tyler Warren, Trey Wallace, and deep post. We've talked about it. I mean, Tyler Warren over the middle of the field, I really like. These are some weak safeties we're facing. Now, for it to go, like I said, there's a million ways I think it could go good. For me, that is the main thing. He's indoors. We're in a calm, safe environment. We're not in 15-degree weather here at Beaver Stadium with the wind. So none of that. He had a really good game last time he was in an indoor stadium. I feel like this is going to be a good game for Drew Allar.
So are you referring to Michigan State last year?
No, I was referring to the Big Ten Championship against Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But
that was another one that
he's always pretty good.
Yeah.
He's good in indoors.
Yes, and I think that's a fair point to make, and this is what I had a hard time with in that SMU game is they came out and they were deciding to throw the football. Like James Franklin said, I don't want us to regret. We're going to play on the front foot. We're not going to be conservative. We're going to play to win the game. And then it came out that they came out and started throwing, and that didn't really work for them. So is that the plan tonight? Because just like SMU, there's schematic things about this defense that Penn State can absolutely feast on. Or do they have a different plan, a different mindset? And I think those are the things that, when it comes down to how confident you feel and some of the things I'm still maybe on the fence about, there are some decisions by both staffs that I think can shape the way the game especially starts. And that is key to me in this game. What else is on your mind here as we kind of set the table for Penn State Boise State at 7:30?
Yeah, well, first off, I'll say I want a shot. I want a shot early from Drew Allar, whether that's Amari Evans, whether that's Trey Wallace.
I thought we were doing
we're like New Year's Eve shots. No, not yet, T. Frank. Maybe during the game. Maybe not during the game. Maybe after. But no, I want Drew Allar to take a shot early. These DBs are not that good. I do think it is overblown how bad they are because of the situations they put them in. Because they're blitzing so much, and when their blitzing does not get home, they get absolutely burnt. We're going to get into that more when we talk about the defense, but it's really high risk, high reward. And we've said this, it is a Manny Diaz lookalike defense. Now it is the JV version because Manny Diaz is not calling the plays, and you don't have Abdul Carter, Chop Robinson, Deni Dennis Sutton, all those guys.
Yeah.
But from the standpoint of the blitzing, how risky they are, he loves the 6, 7, 8 men up. Boise State does on defense, where you're trying to confuse the offensive line and confuse the quarterback into a mistake. He does Boise State does all of that. Yeah. So I'm excited to see how the offensive line navigates this. There was a couple times SMU had a 7-up look, and we struggled. And that was actually one of the times Drew Allar got sacked. Yeah. So can we be good against this? And I'll say all the time, we practice against our defense. We should be good against those 6, 7-up man looks that the defense is bringing. Because that's, like I said, that's what we face. When you go third down period in offense, in practice, and it's one-on-ones, 1 versus 1, 2s versus 2s, you're seeing that defense. And there's, even this late in the year, you're still getting reps 1s versus 1s, 2s versus 2s, because Franklin wants to keep the competitive nature. So you're seeing that. I'm sure they got a lot of reps against that. I can tell you, Trout, offensive line coach for Penn State, has a test due Tuesday. Well, it's all kind of messed up. I'm talking in terms of the games on Saturday, but he has a test
game
due
Tuesday.
Yeah, game Tuesday. But he has a test due on Tuesday. You have another one due on Thursday. Friday night in the hotel, you have another test. So it's always, hey, let's have attention to detail. We need to pick up these little things.
It's so fascinating you say that. And this is why I love having you on the show and your insight, because there is this narrative when things don't go right that, what are they practicing? What are they working on? Why don't they get these things? And how could they not? And, there's a certain percentage of the conversation that lands on everything is the coach's fault. And I'm just curious, can you just, again, like, how prepared do you feel like players are on the field, and how, I'm not trying to say it's their fault, like it's always their fault, because sometimes I feel like, the scheme can put you in a bad situation, even if you know what you're doing. But like, how does that all work? How does that all work?
Yeah, I can't really fully speak to the defensive side, but as far as the offensive side, I never once went into a game and let's say they came out in something and I go, oh crap, what are we doing against this? Like we haven't repped this, we haven't prepped for this. That hasn't happened really ever from when I played. Mm-hmm. Now, there are times where obviously teams come in and they run some new concepts. Boise State, they've had almost a month off at this point. They might have a couple new things, and we've talked about this, though. My favorite thing is the idea that I've had people say, oh, yeah, Boise State, they're going to completely switch up their defense and their offense. Yeah. When you get to the playoffs and you have a break, the thing that you ran all year to get you to the playoffs, you're not just going to magically stop doing that. Because I had someone say, but they might not blitz at all. And I'm like, that's how they got here. Like, that's their identity. That's what they do. Right. It's not going to change. So, for the most part, you are able to game plan for everything that you can assume you are going to see in this game.
The creamery is going to serve ice cream, but what's the flavor? Yeah. And that's, I asked James Franklin about this one time about starting fast. I think this was last year, and talked about the concept of what you don't know going into a game, and he called it the blitz of the week. What's the blitz of the week? What's the thing they've changed up? We saw SMU change some things up that I think threw the offense off in that game last. Was it last week at this point?
Who even knows? Like days don't make sense anymore.
10 days ago, I think it was at this point, which makes it like last-ish week. Anyway, there were things that you change, and Penn State is a team that you have to change things for, because if you play your scheme straight up, there are a handful of teams that can just play Penn State straight up, what's on film, and still win. Ohio State put in wrinkles. Everyone does this week to week to week, but Penn State does get a lot of those things. So it is interesting to watch all of this play out and those kind of things early in the game.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you from an offensive standpoint, when we come in on Tuesday, you get a sheet and it gets handed to you. And right there, you see how many new plays you're adding. I got to learn, and like you said, it's just a variation. We have our power run scheme, but we're just going to add this little wrinkle to it. So sometimes you'll go in and there's only 3 new plays and you go, oh, thank God. But then sometimes you go in and there's 9 new plays. And generally, you don't even really run most of them, but you go out there and everybody's like MAing, which is missed assignments. And it's we just learned 9 new plays. And it's like, okay, 30 minutes later, go out and execute on the practice field. So, and it's hard because guys are like, we've done this play that we've repped all year, and now you add new little wrinkles, and guys have to get comfortable with that. But just telling you, that's kind of how it works. When you come in Tuesday, and I'm saying the days, I'm talking if the game was on Saturday, but when you come in about 5 days before the game, that is how it works. It's maybe like 7 plays, 8 plays for an offense max. Defense, it's a lot less. There's not as much to really change. You might add up, switch a blitz around a little bit. If you identify a weak point on the offensive line that you really want to attack, well, I might have designed a blitz really around that. Hey, let's attack that left guard. But for the most part, it is the same thing that you saw in film that you will see in the game.
And as you mentioned, I wanted to throw this out there because I like to be the analogy guy, even though I get in the middle of them sometimes and my brain freezes. That's a family trait, by the way, of like, it's like and then nobody in my family actually thought what it was like. We just wanted to jump in there with something. But this defense and the feel of it, and like after a certain while, do you get a feeling like you see something and you kind of see almost on the chalkboard, you can visualize what the rotations on defense look like. You can feel the way it's supposed to be. Like Manny Diaz's defenses like to turn. They like to have this rotation or this circular movement to them of attack and replace. And it feels like a beautiful mind. It feels like, the gif of all the numbers and quadrangles and things in the lady's face, and she's like doing mental math. That's what it feels like. This defense to me feels like a wrench from the 1950s. It's going to be so utilitarian and unbelievably effective, and it won't break for the entirety of your life, but it's just a wrench. That's all it does. It does one thing. This defense, it is very straightforward. It attacks. It overloads. It makes you feel like there's a lot there. It's hefty, but it's just a wrench.
I like it. It's gonna be good, D. Frank. I'm excited for this one. I'm just gonna make this statement now. I think we're gonna win by like 17 points.
Oh boy!
Yeah, I just had to throw that out there. I was feeling it was just on the tip of my tongue. I just needed to put that out there. But before we get into anything else,
feeling good. You know what? You should feel good because HF Transplant here on the BWI YouTube channel says first round on me. Happy New Year's. Awesome job, guys. Thank you so much. And again, if you're listening here on 99.5 The Bus or if you're listening on Bigfoot Country Legends, we're also streamed on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. If you want to interact with us, that's the way you can interact with the show is on the YouTube stream. We got a great audience. We got a lot of regulars here. HF Transplant is always here on the Tailgate Show, always on the postgame show. Everyone's feeling good. New Year's Eve, everyone's pumped and excited. That's a nice first round, by the way. $20.
$20, yeah. Well,
first round
in State College, that's good. Now, New York, that won't even get you. If you go to New York for New Year's Eve, that's not even one round. That's not even one drink, let alone a
that's
round.
A down payment.
Exactly, a down payment for your night out of New Year's Eve. And for anybody that was asking, I went into the closet tonight, and I'm like, what am I going to wear? I got to wear something good. I knew I had the glasses. We stopped at, by the way, Five Below. For shame. I went into Five Below. They had and this was 2 days ago, no New Year's Eve stuff, no nothing. And I'm like, this is what you're made for. I'm like, this is why you're going out of business. So these came from Target, but I went into I went into my
Surprise,
dressing room.
This show brought to you by Five Below.
Yeah, really. No, it's the opposite of a shout out, man. But I went into my dressing room, D. Frank, and I said a dressing room. My closet. I don't have a dressing room. We're at the studio. We got dressing rooms back here. T. Frank's wardrobe is always set out like this.
My butler walked me into my dressing room.
Okay, but long story short, I was like, I got to do something special. And I forgot that I had this in my closet. This is Franco Harris jersey that we wore, the whole team wore them at the Rose Bowl because Franco had just passed, I want to say a couple days before the Rose Bowl happened in 2023. So we all wore the Franco jersey coming in to the Rose Bowl. So I still have it, and I figured, hey, it's a good look. New Year's, let's get into it. I'm excited.
Yeah. We're all seeing as we're talking about the things we're doing. I don't know if it's even noticeable, but this is officially a playoff beard.
Oh, so do you shave when we lose, or like how does that work?
So I have to be on air, and I have to be somewhat presentable. Even though you can go onto the YouTube channel and see like me have a full-on associative breakdown last year, and I had a beard down to like here or something like that. But like I trim it, but I'm not gonna like the full bulk of it. Like it's just a thing that I like to do, and I was like, yeah, it's a playoff beard. And somebody the other day was like, oh well, so you root for Penn State? I'm like, no, it's just a passage of it's marking the passage of time. But if you want to, if you're rooting for the playoff beard, then I guess we're all on the same side here. And with that, as I bring everything crashing to down to a halt with that awkward transition, let's get into Penn State practice update. What happened at this point? It was last Friday as Penn State practiced in State College before they headed out to the bowl site. We're going to have that information update for you on the Tailgate Show, driven by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
I'm Thomas Frank Carr. This is your Penn State practice update. Want to get updates about practice immediately as it's happening and afterwards with detailed analysis? Join Blue White Illustrated right now for just $1 and get access for 7 days. Once you're done trying us out, you can decide if you want to subscribe for a year. The little changes make a notable difference when you've been watching the same handful of drills since July. After starting with the entire offensive squad in ball carrier drills, the quarterback split off from the group before the end of that drill to work on some passing footwork. Next, the wide receivers, as usual, came into focus along the sidelines of Haluba Hall. Wide receiver Tyseer Denmark was not with the starting unit last week and was then out against SMU last Saturday. This week, he was back in the rotation, but went through the line after third-year receiver Tyler Johnson. Usually, when a player is returning from injury, they don't immediately assume their spot back in the lineup, even if they're a starter. After a steady climb up the depth chart during the 2024 season, Denmark is now experiencing his first visible setback in that journey. It was also notable that he was in his own number 4 jersey and not that of a Boise State receiver on the practice squad. The most notable absence was slot receiver Caden Saunders, who was not with the team during our view of practice. We'll stick with the receivers for this final note. Sometimes it's difficult to tell each receiver in the group, especially when they're wearing practice squad jerseys. However, it was fairly easy to pick out new freshman receiver Lyric Samuel, part of the class of 2025, because he was wearing his last name and double zeros on the back of his jersey. Another notable addition was quarterback Beckham Kritza, who was watching the quarterbacks in street clothes. That is your Penn State practice update. More from the Tailgate Show next. 5, a big addition, another wide receiver. So Ryan, let's break down Devonte Ross, Troy wide receiver coming to the Nittany Lions. What do you know? Where do you want to start the conversation? Devonte Ross, the latest commit to Penn State through the portal.
Well, I think you start that conversation with the fact that Jared Parker's was his head coach, right? So those are obviously very strong ties to Penn State staff, and James has made it very clear that when guys enter the portal, I mean, they're getting as much information as they can from every avenue. And so the fact that this is somebody who, always had good terms on Penn State. Obviously, he got promoted, became an offensive coordinator. Like, that was never a sore loss from what I understand. They didn't want him to go, obviously. There's good ties there. And I think that probably played a big role in Penn State being comfortable and taking Devonte Ross. But, look at the stats, right? Obviously had a breakout year this past season, 76 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. I think that's exciting to fans. I think if you watched the Iowa game and some of the ways he was able to make plays in that game, he had a kick return in that game, I believe, right?
I believe he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
He had 2 long touchdowns as well. So lots of big plays.
So those are always encouraging. What role he's going to play at Penn State will be interesting moving forward. You would think that, he's somewhat like an Omari Evans to some degree, just from the little bit that I've seen. We'll see long term, if Omari were to move on or anything like that. There's no information right now that that's a definite, but time will tell. But that's just kind of, when I watch him play, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. 5'11", 160, originally was a Kentucky commit, did not end up at Kentucky. Yeah.
He's a small 160.
Yeah. I would certainly think that they would like to get some weight on him with time. But with that said, I mean, look, if you can avoid tackles and break down the field and just avoid cornerbacks and safeties altogether, I don't know how much it really even matters to. But time will tell. Out of Cartersville, Georgia, and like I said, he was originally going to Kentucky, ended up at Troy, and really took a big step in 2023 as far as receptions and all that stuff go. I think it was 400 and some yards that year. I apologize, 447 is what I thought it was, but it was nothing like this past season where he really became one of Troy's predominant playmakers, maybe their top guy. So
he had
time will tell. Go ahead.
588 yards in the first 2 years, and then 1,042 last year.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that really pops out to me when I'm just like, we're not trying to be like negative or anything, but just like when I look at numbers and stuff, like there's a lot of positive things there. The one thing is just a 12.8% drop percentage. That was the one thing that kind of grabbed my eyes as far as a negative. So I don't know enough about their quarterback though, and stuff like that I don't want to put too much stock into that because I didn't watch Troy a ton this year.
So I did some advanced scouting on him, and I took a look at the film to look at some of the games where he succeeded. Obviously, watching the game against Iowa, and then there was another game, I believe, against Indiana. They did a great job, Indiana did, at taking him away by denying the scheme. So if he was running an out route, they would flood that zone, or they would play a high-low on him specifically so the quarterback couldn't get him the football. So he didn't have a big impact on that game, but to me, that was very much Indiana knowing the situation and being better schematically to take him away from those designed plays.
At your tailgate. Get the expert's view of today's game. Here's Landon Tengwall as he gives you the key matchups. Brought to you by Stalker Chevrolet. For your next vehicle purchase, come to Stalker Chevrolet and save with low interest rates. And remember, only at Stalker Chevrolet will you get the Stalker Advantage with the purchase of any new vehicle.
Welcome back into the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I am Landon Tengwall giving you guys the key matchup of the Fiesta Bowl. For me, it doesn't get easier than this. It is the Penn State defensive line versus that Boise State offensive line. You can also just call it Ashton Jeanty. But I think Ashton Jeanty is going to get his because he is one of the greatest running backs ever. Now, how do we slow him down? That is the offensive line. And more specifically, the two matchups I like the most. Their left guard. I think he's really weak. That is Zane Durant's matchup. I think he can really get after him. He struggles on the reach block. He just struggles being in power, really. He's kind of off balance a lot. He doesn't look like he's just...
For their left guard, and they very much have a, like, this is our pass blocking side, this is our run blocking side in a traditional sense. He's their athletic guard, by the way. As Landon is laying this out, he's the more athletic one.
Exactly. And then, so I really like that matchup there between Zane Durant and the left guard. And then at right tackle, I really like the matchup denied Dennis Sutton, especially in the run game versus their right tackle, number 65. Now, he's been banged up. The conference championship game in the Mountain West, they played 75 at right tackle to start. So he's one of the backup offensive linemen who might be one of the worst offensive linemen I've ever seen. And so I got really excited when I was watching that. But then I continued the game and I saw that 65 was like banged up. But 75 was performing so bad at right tackle that they played an injured 65 for the back half of the conference championship game. So we will see 65. He's obviously had time to rest up, but from my understanding, he has a shoulder injury. My guess, being a former offensive lineman, he probably has a torn labrum. I mean,
we've seen that story all year long with Anthony Donko.
Exactly. It does not. A torn labrum doesn't heal in 3 weeks. He has 3 weeks off. It's the surgery has to heal it. So I'm not diagnosing him, but something is mechanically probably wrong in there, from my understanding. So there's opportunity there. I think he has a really weak edge in the passing game, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the near future here, but they don't get in the drop back pass game very much. But I think Dennis Sutton can really get after him. I was talking about earlier, those reach blocks when they're running, let's say outside zone to the left, that right tackle really struggles to get any cutoff. If he's trying to cut off the 3 tech, whether that's Devonte Thomas, someone else, if Dennis Sutton, whatever, pops around a little bit, he just really struggles with movement. He can't move very well. That's the biggest thing. These Boise State offensive linemen are not athletic. They are just kind of big, and they do a decent job. And guess what? When you have Ashton Jeanty, you only need to do so much, T. Frank.
You build the team that you have to win, first off, the way that you can, with the skill play, with the talent inside the scheme, right? You have to make choices. This is the conversation we had about Oregon. You have to make choices when you're building your team. Very few teams get to pick all of it. So how do you build your team? They want to be a run-first team. So they got physical, big, strong guys, air quotes around all of this, to run in the Mountain West. And now you're facing a defense that is big, athletic, and strong. Maybe it's not the biggest defensive line in the world, but they are going to test that athleticism and that style and that plan. And this is where, when we talk about, like, I like thinking of it like, like chess pieces, like the tactics of the game. Your choices will be exposed in this game if something doesn't happen for Boise State that go back to how did you build your team. Penn State had the same conversation when they went against Oregon. You're facing a team that has a more complete profile. How do you adjust and overcome that if you can? How do you win the game despite those odds? Boise State, to me, this is the part where you mentioned they have 3 weeks off. You're not changing your whole playbook, but do you have enough wrinkles and surprises within the structure of what you already do to attack Penn State and get big plays and touchdowns quickly? Starting fast in this game, to me, as we've outlined, is super important, and that's where I think one of the things Penn State does, they've tried to do recently, is start faster, score points, be more explosive to begin the game. But there is a conservative nature to the way Drew Allar plays the game. When it comes down to it, I'm not making a mistake. So if you are running a seam route to Tyler Warren in the first game against SMU in the first quarter on the first drive, and they play cover 2 instead of 3, well, I'm not going to throw that, because I know that he's too close to the outside safety. Or if you're Drew Allar and you needle the ball in there, you can make that throw anyway. He's always going to choose to be safe. And I'm not saying that was a wrong decision. I'm explaining as best I can that decision-making process. So Ashton Jeanty, if he can keep them in the game, because he's made this offensive line look good, even against Oregon. So there is evidence on tape that they can, what are the things they're going to do to make that reality happen early in the game? And I think that's a major factor here. But from the matchup perspective, I think Penn State dominates up front, and that's going to be a deciding factor for them. When let's spin it now to talk about the rest of the defense, because the whole defense has to rally and tackle. They have to be part of the picture against this running back. So if you are Penn State, I got a couple guys in mind where I think there could be some issues. Where do you see the issues for Penn State if something happens? And you mentioned he's going to get his. Where are the weak points for Penn State's defense where they might be exploited?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is tackling. This is a game where you obviously have to wrap up, and that's something that guys have struggled with a little bit this year. And guys have had good games. Tony Ross has stacked a couple good games. Akee Wheatley has had some good games, but there's also been games where we've seen the tackling really, really struggle. This cannot be one of those games, because I'll tell you, there's even times where these offensive linemen, and I've talked about this on my show, they're double teams. They literally just only care about the defensive lineman, the down lineman. Their double team is supposed to go to a linebacker, and they just go, Jeanty will take care of that guy.
He's got it.
Well, I've literally seen where a team puts 8 in the box, and they just go, yeah, we're still going to run inside zone at the middle. Jeanty just meets someone in the hole and just, like, bounces off.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the biggest thing is they run a lot of duo, which inside zone, whatever you want to call it. It's up the middle.
Yep.
But Jeanty is so good at pressing into the line of scrimmage. And what that does, it starts to suck everybody kind of in. Mm-hmm. And he's, as you mentioned, 5'9". He'll suck everybody in, and he's kind of small, and he's so athletic, he'll just stick his foot in the ground, boom, and then he's outside. And it's like, whoa, where did he go? And so that is the biggest problem. So not only, being gap sound and being where you need to be, but then after that, can we make those tackles? I think he has something that's not being talked about. I watch his stiff arm. His stiff arm is really good. He's put a lot of guys in the dirt. And, there's plays, and like I said, it's been the Mountain West, but he also kind of did it against Oregon. And I don't mean to sound like a Boise State fan over here for bringing up the Oregon game, but he did. He's shown he's able to do it against other talent too. I think that was a lot, comparing the Oregon defense in week 2 versus the Penn State defense in week 15, whatever we're in, is obviously a big difference. But Boise State got better too. Yeah. And so I know I'm excited to see how we fare against him, but it's going to be can Kobe King, can Tony Rojas, Abdul Carter, if he's moving around a little bit, how can they impact this game? Can we get him down in the backfield? Because there is many of times, honestly, Ashton Jeanty's biggest highlight plays, he's touched in the backfield by a defensive tackle, by a linebacker, and he just makes something out of nothing. So can we contain that and make those plays that he makes something out of just a minimal gain instead of him turning it into a 20-yard gain or even worse, a 60-yard touchdown run?
Yeah. there's so much stuff into the 60-yard touchdown run. So I've done a lot of like the analytical research on this, and Penn State has not given up those big plays. When they've given up 20+ yard runs or 10+ yard runs or 15+ yard runs, it averaged like it stops at 20. That is generally what happens. So you should feel good if you're a Penn State fan that those things can happen in this game. But if you overload the box, now you got one safety deep, now you're in trouble. Now you're in a situation, and to me, that contain keeping those players in space from having to make those hard decisions and those hard plays comes down to a couple of guys. And this goes into my thoughts about what Boise State might do. Like, what have we seen work against Penn State that they can apply to their game plan? Running into the boundary, I think, has been a big thing, where if you're trying to put Ashton Jeanty against A.J. Harris in the boundary, that is a big win for Boise State. And there have been
boundary?
The boundary?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry.
The boundary?
Sorry. So you have the long side and the short side of the field. When you're on the hash, it's the short side of the field. It's maybe 15 yards wide, 17 yards wide, something like that. But if you can run that way to the short side of the field, you've seen Will Howard, Jordan James from Oregon. Teams have done things schematically in a similar way to get a shortcut into space. And you don't want this guy in space. So that's something that, Penn State's got to be aware of. And the contain players to make that not happen, Denai Dennis Sutton, I think, is huge in this game, as you mentioned, from a good and bad perspective. He can dominate that matchup. But if Ashton Jeanty threatens the edge, and suddenly you've got 272-pound Denai Dennis Sutton, who does a lot of great things, but turning is not one of them, that is a concern for Penn State. If you play man coverage, everyone has to play man coverage. There's not really an option unless you double team a guy like Ashton Jeanty. Do you get a situation where even it's in the run game, if you have a run blitz and Kobe King is one-on-one, and it's a race with him and Ashton Jeanty the sideline, out into space maybe, you have to have a safety and a corner and everybody around the ball. You can't have one-on-one situations. So those are the areas, and I know everyone's screaming Tony Rojas. That's a given. It's a given. Missing a tackle in the hole, that's a given. I'm talking about some of the things that might show up in this game where Penn State has been good, but this might be a situation where it might not be good. So on that second level, I think, the corners and safeties, obviously, Penn State has had really strong tacklers, and they've also had some big misses. So mitigating those situations, I think, is critical, and that comes back to what we talked about. There was one, and this is the last thing I'll say before we move on to the next kind of defensive topic. And I want to get into what it looks like if Penn State does force them into third and long situations, and the passing game in general. But I've done a lot of research of how you can go. What are the situations where he struggled? What are the concepts where he struggled? Ashton Jeanty has struggled. If you were to get players in the backfield, again, defeat the offensive line. If you were to only run stunts and slants and defensive line games, so just generally the bucket of things where I was researching, he has 34 carries for 144 yards. So that's mitigating Ashton Jeanty in this game. That's getting tackles for loss. Is there still going to be a lot of big plays mixed in there? So
I love that point because I didn't have those stats, but watching the tape, that was one of my big cut-ups that I made about their offensive line. They struggle with movement heavily. They don't register it very fast, and that's also not only do they not register it, but when you're not a very athletic offensive lineman, you can't recover. We talk about our guys are very talented. The guys we have on our roster and our offensive line play. That is where it's different between a Power 4 offensive lineman or a Mountain West offensive lineman who's in a group of 5. It is different. The play is different. So I think if you're this Penn State defense, you have to find ways to put this offense in uncomfortable situations. And I think that number one thing is blitzing, movement, whatever you want to do, but move your guys around because, as you said, they struggle with it. And when Jeanty's he is Superman, but listen, you get hit in the backfield enough, there's going to be some TFLs. He's not going to. We will tackle better than Washington State did or that UNLV did. You trust and believe that.
I know that I said I wanted to move on to the passing game. There's another thing here on the YouTube channel I want to get to, but what you said, and this is where it set me down this road of watching them in, I want to say it was the Mountain West Championship game. And one thing that Penn State does a lot is slanting against zone, right? One of the ways to defeat zone blocking, which is, I'm going to say this very generally, you're trying to block the area this way. If you're running this way, you're trying to steal a gap on the defense. So instead of trying to beat the offensive line to the front side, you just take a step back, you shimmy into the hole, and you attack upfield. Everyone does this, right? Yep. Everyone does this. Yep. And for some reason in the championship game, it was like they had never seen it before. And I just thought to myself, how, as you mentioned, teams get better. How could you be at this point in the season, and that is still happening, to the level that it was more than one offensive lineman? I found that to be shocking and I think illuminative of what could happen in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's funny you say that, because as you and me both watch the tape, you try to decipher what is going on in the tape, who messed up, and a lot of times it's hard to know if someone MAs means a missed assignment, which is one of the worst things in football, and once you get to the NFL level, MAs will get you fired really quick. Now,
how bad does it feel?
Oh, it's the worst thing, and then you're sitting in the film room, and it's like, all right, the clicker, and your play's coming up, and you're sitting like this, and you're like, please don't get to the play before lift, because you got film and then you got lift, and it's like, oh my God, 3 more minutes, and I don't have to see the play, and then they get to it, and it's like, oh no, and you shrink down, and the coach will play it, and then he just turns and looks at you, and is like, how do you feel about that? And it's like, no, I don't feel good at all, man. I'm not gonna lie to you, but saying all that to say, I saw that a ton from this Boise State offensive line. They had a lot of missed assignments. They, like we said, struggled with movement. It's not an impressive group. I think they do a lot to protect them. We'll talk about them in the passing game too once we get into the passing scheme, but everything is kind of designed to help the offensive line protect them, and Genty obviously naturally does that, being a great running back. It's
amazing that we spent like 40 minutes talking about 600 different ways to say the same thing. I was running. I was running the same conversation because I was having this conversation on the show on Monday with Sean Fitz, and I'm like getting into it like you and I are getting into it now, and he's like, "You got to stop Ashton Genty," and I'm like, "I know, I agree." I don't have a response to that. Because that's it, right?
So let me pose this: I don't think we can stop him. Can you slow him down?
That's what he was saying.
Okay, is there a world where you think we can stop him? And stop him would be under 100 yards.
I don't want to say, because I don't think it is good juju, but it involves him not playing most of the game.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So
I don't think there's a world where he doesn't go over 100. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So the other. Now you got my brain churning.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State holds on to the ball with multiple 13-play drives in each half. So you hold the ball for half of the first quarter, you get a 3-and-out, you hold the ball for half of the second quarter, you get a 7-play, 8-play drive, maybe he gets 40 yards in the first half, right? Just because they never had the football.
So your idea basically of how we stop Ashton Genty is just multiple different ways of him not playing.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, that's it. Yeah. This question here, and this came in a little bit earlier from S, who says, "I'd like to bring up a big positive in their view, that no one gives Franklin credit for this year. It's actually something that I thought about this year, and I'm glad S brought this up. 3 new coordinators in one season, and reaching this far is exceptional. What do you guys think?" I'd go even further. We haven't talked about that since August.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been.
We haven't talked about new coordinators, new schemes, mental mistakes. We've talked about tackling. We've talked about big plays, but we have not talked about execution at any point this year. And I think that is a credit to James Franklin, going all the way back to the conversations he had about, we're not starting over. You're bringing in your offense. You're going to do what you do, but you're going to do it in the language that we speak here. And I think that of making 10 people change instead of 125 people change, that is paying dividends with what S is talking about here. And I think that that's something that we talked about early in the year, and then we just it's like an offensive lineman. It was just running in the background efficiently.
Yeah, no, and you make a good point. So I actually had Yurcich my whole time technically, but me and him came in together, and I kind of knew a little bit about Kirk Ciarrocca's offense. There wasn't much to it, I'm going to be honest. But the language, they made Yurcich kind of use that language in his new plays instead of Yurcich coming in saying, hey, here's my playbook. And like you said, 120 guys going, okay, I got to learn all this, figure this out. That's how Franklin is. He kind of makes his coordinators adapt to, it's a lot, like you said, it's a lot easier to make 1 or 2 guys learn everything than 120 guys. It's just more efficient. And that is definitely something that, look, Coach Franklin deserves some credit for sure for the guys he has put in place this year to lead the offense, defense, and special teams. They've had a pretty good year, I'd say. So over on, honestly, special teams, the reason we're here, because, listen, we lose to Minnesota, we're playing in the Relic Quest Bowl or something. We're playing Bama instead of Michigan. So
we have to talk about some mascot debasing himself on field, and I just I don't have,
or a Pop-Tart bowl or something.
That's what I didn't want to give him credit of talking about them specifically with their brand, but yes, that one. Here's the problem: it's like the turnover chain at Miami, right? So it was cool at Miami, and then everyone has a turnover basketball hoop, everyone has a turnover clock, everyone has a turnover chair. I saw one where you got to go and sit in the turnover chair, not a throne, chair.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah,
I'm out.
I'm out on and so it is like anything that goes viral, it is in some ways a sickness. Let's talk. We have only a couple minutes. It's a perfect amount of time to talk about the Boise State passing attack. So I was on with Steve Jones, and he asked Ashton Jeanty last year really involved in the passing game. This year, not as much, about 300 yards receiving, I think. To me, you can't use play action and have the thing that everyone's chasing also be a high volume target. I don't know how you work in Ashton Jeanty into the passing game as a high volume player if everyone's already paying attention to him and you're building your offense around play action. Do you think that, let's just say in this game, he's more active? How does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if they want to spread it out a little bit, they will put him when they go 5 wide. You see that sometimes, and they love him in the screen game, out in a wide receiver type position, and get him in space because Ashton Jeanty in space is incredibly dangerous. So I mean, yeah, like you said though, I don't think they are going to change their identity. They run the ball 75% of the time, and if not, it's generally play action. And like you said, all eyes are going to be on Jeanty. That is who we have to stop. And, talking about the passing game, I think that's where it can get dangerous if they are able to parlay a great game for Ashton Jeanty where he's starting to gash us and they go, okay, now they're creeping up. Yeah. Now those linebackers, those safeties, they're creeping up a couple yards, and then we go, boom, play action, crosser right over the middle. Or they love their flood concepts. Flood concepts are generally 3 guys to one side, and you can do it a million different ways to get them there, but it's generally a long route that's a streak, some type of either cross or coming across the field.
Usually
or maybe
from the backside.
Or it could just be a corner route or a C route that's also on that side, and then a flat route.
Yep.
Because they want to make this passing game as easy as possible for Madsen.
Yeah.
That is the number one thing I noticed. It's like when he has to sit back there and drop back and read a defense, oh, good God, help him.
Yeah.
But when he is in play action and rolling out, and it's like, okay, I got a 3-level concept here, and I just got to pick which one I'm going to go to.
Yeah.
And it gets a lot easier. So that's...
Yeah, from that perspective, what you're reading is you're reading 2 defenders, essentially. You're reading the deep defender, which is a quick yes or no, and then is the high-low defender of that guy has to make a decision if he's going to cover the deep route or if you're going to get the short route. And that is a half-field read is so much more simple than I have to read the safeties, understand where the rotation is going, know my concepts, and predict where I should put the football. And again, Drew Allar does that really well, which is an NFL style of play style. So if he plays well, and I want to get into this next segment, I don't know how Boise State contends with that. Any quick thoughts before we get to that?
No, I think you're dead on. If Drew Allar comes to play, the receivers have a good day, and Tyler Warren has a great day, I don't see a way Boise State sticks with us. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, Vegas has this at 11.5 for a reason. It is what it is. That's where we sit. We are the heavy favorites, and as we talked about, the only position they got us at is running back. If our players play how they should, I think this is an easy victory.
Well, James Franklin is going to talk about how great Boise State is and how they have his attention in the Coach's Corner, which is right now. After that, we'll be back on the Tailgate Show, driven by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
Press conferences are boring, right? That's why we've set aside the most important stuff for you. It's Coach's Corner, powered by Bobby Ray Hall Honda on West College Avenue, State College. Online at Bobby Ray Hall Honda of StateCollege.com.
The Nittany Lions are in sunny Arizona for the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. It's New Year's Eve football in the Fiesta Bowl against number 4 Boise State. The Broncos earned a first-round bye in the playoff as a conference champion. Head coach James Franklin and company know the Broncos have some talent, including star running back Ashton Jeanty.
In any other year, I think the guy wins the Heisman, and you could make the argument that he should have won it this year. He is hard to tackle. He is compact, is 5'10", has the ability to run away from you, has the ability to make you miss. They get him involved in the pass game. They get him involved in the run game. And then the quarterback is athletic as well. He reminds me a little bit of the quarterback that we faced from West Virginia. We had a ton of respect for on tape when we played them. But they're a problem, but I think it starts and ends with the running back.
This time of year can get a little hectic in the college football world, having to balance the holidays, game prep, and the transfer portal. So how did the coaching staff prepare in the week leading up to the Fiesta Bowl?
They'll have off until Christmas Day evening. We'll have a team meeting and practice that evening. So after that, after Christmas Day around 5 o'clock, we're getting in our normal game week. So for us, we always take whenever the game is and count back 7 days, and that's our normal game week. And we try to stick to that routine as much as we possibly can. It's been good to us, and our players and coaches believe in it.
The college football playoffs are win or go home. After the SMU victory, offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki talked about playing the game to win instead of playing not to lose. James Franklin echoed that statement about playing aggressively.
We've talked about that a lot as players, with the players. We've talked about that a lot with the staff in terms of how we call the game, how we prepare for the game, how we game plan, players being aggressive, playing on their toes, not on their heels, making aggressive calls. I think some of the calls that we have made going forward on fourth down, those types of things, we want to be as aggressive as we possibly can. We want to be very aggressive. We don't want to have any regrets. Playing to win, I think, is a mentality that everybody has to embrace and be on the same page with.
Taking a trip to a warm climate in the middle of winter can sometimes be a distraction, especially in the old days of bowl games. But James Franklin says this is not the same old Fiesta Bowl. This time, it's all business.
This is a business trip for us. It's not like we're going to be, as you guys know, this isn't like the normal bowl games anymore. This is the playoffs and the second round of the playoffs. And we're still obviously under the bowl umbrella and very appreciative of the Fiesta Bowl. But this isn't like, when we would come there and go on trips and do different activities. We're there to play the game. I know the Fiesta Bowl is going to, do some phenomenal things and treat us in a first-class manner because that's just how they operate and that's what they do. But for us, this is about, coming out there and getting our team ready to play a really good Boise team and represent the Big Ten and represent Penn State University and our alumni and our lettermen and our entire community the right way.
That's your Coach's Corner. Back with more of the Tailgate Show after this.
Amazing when you get behind the wheel of a Lexus sedan, SUV, or...
I think you got to take things in perspective of Penn State has always leaned towards taking care of their guys. They obviously want a Nick Singleton to come back, or a Trey Wallace to come back, Omari. Like, they have guys in place where they want them to come back. Katron Allen. So what we're seeing here is, I think behind the scenes, they're trying to make sure that they can do everything they can to retain those guys, keep them next season. Not to mention on defense, Deny, Kobe King, Zane Durant. Like, those are all guys that would fetch more money on the open market if they were to leave. Penn State needs to take care of those guys. And because I think that they're focusing on that primarily, it makes it much more difficult for them to go get a Micah Hudson. When Micah Hudson's going to Texas A&M. I mean, we know all about Texas A&M and how aggressive they can be. Eric Singleton Jr., for example, the former Georgia Tech wide receiver, he's going to Auburn. Like, look at where these top guys are going, and it's easier to kind of figure things out. Nick Anderson went to LSU. Barry and Brown, LSU. Kevin Coleman, former Mississippi State guy, Missouri. We know how aggressive Missouri is. Miami. There's for CJ Daniels. Like, when you look at these very, very top tier guys, and I know Penn State fans are saying, we need these top tier guys. We got to pay them, whatever it takes. Well, I don't know what the money is behind the scenes, but I'm willing to bet it's all upwards of well over $1 million for receivers, and just it's risky. It's risky.
Yeah. I don't know that I've seen a guy that's like an impact wide receiver, number one, no holes, kind of out there that's realistic. And that is me kind of the guys that have been on their radar that I've taken a look at, I don't know that I've seen one that goes, oh, they have to get that guy. There's been some names floated around, but it's never been, reported by you guys that they, either a visit or any serious interest. And so like you are chasing and you are throwing a lot of money. I want to wrap it up with this. And you mentioned, what was it, $4 million at Duke?
So, yeah.
Top backups in the NFL. I just kind of scrolled down with my eyeballs till I found Jacoby Brissett. Total value of his contract is $8 million, 6.5 average guaranteed. The next one, Tyrod Taylor, 4.2. So right after that is the Duke quarterback. So a backup quarterback in the NFL, a high-end backup in the quarterback in the NFL is a low-end college starter. Wow. Here we are. We have officially found we found the cap numbers and the translations for how all of this works. And I don't even know what Imalava or any of the starting quarterbacks in college football at some of these NIL centric places are making. I'm sure some of those numbers are out there, but this is, we are now in a one-to-one comparison as far as the pay level for these players.
And I don't think this will last long. I do think we're in a 2-3 year thing where this will happen until once revenue sharing gets fully worked in, we're talking another year or two. Collectives aren't going away. If you guys are donating to a collective right now, I'm sorry, they're still going to be asking you.
This is the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, and as you heard, Blaise Alexander Family Dealerships celebrating more than 40 years of service to the community. Blaise Alexander Family Dealerships has a vehicle to fit your budget and transportation needs. Home of the $1,000 lowest price guarantee with 20 locations throughout Pennsylvania. Thanks again to Blaise Alexander for being the sponsor here of the Tailgate Show, allowing us to do these things here that we do.
See, Frank, I got to just make this statement. I wanted to wait till we were around peak viewership here. If you didn't see on Twitter, I put out earlier this week, I said if the Boise State defensive line gets a sack off a 4-man rush, no blitzing, then I'm going to donate $100 to Ashton Genty's Rushing Towards Legacy, I believe it's called. But he has a foundation. They've raised $250,000. I said I'm going to donate $100 if they get home on a 4-man rush, because I made that statement because they came after me relentlessly, their fans, when I said I didn't think their pass rush was that good at all. And for me, pass rush and blitzing are two different things. Your pass rush is your 4-down lineman, and then the blitzing game is that's a whole different world. Yeah, that's what they're really good at, and that's why they're second in sacks. But for me, I listen. I got confidence in my guys up front, so technically, kind of betting on my guys. But hey, it all goes to a good place if I lose. So.
Yeah. It's a win-win sort of bet.
Yeah,
I got a couple people here on the YouTube channel. Your collective analysis, says Ted, has kept me sane this week. Here's to getting another week of work out of you guys. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm willing to keep working. That I enjoy doing this so much. And also, when you guys are happy, it makes my life so much easier. KJ Johnson, Happy New Year to you guys and everyone in the chat. Genty will get his, but the W is for Penn State, 38-14. KJ, another regular here on the YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate your thoughts. If you're listening on the radio and you want to give us your predictions, you can either yell it and then hope the universe sends it over to us, or you can drop it. You can just go to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, drop your prediction in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. So this game on offense for Penn State, I feel, is really interesting because, as you mentioned, those blitz packages, the pressure. I didn't think SMU would have much success last week against Penn State's offensive line, because we've seen that exact body type, attack style, and plan of attack, but better against Oregon. And I just don't know how football works sometimes, where it's you see one thing that has clearly been stated. This happened. It is cemented in history. We have it on film. We have the video evidence. And the next week, the opposite happens. And week to week, none of the people changed on the offensive side for Penn State. And so this game feels a lot like that. It feels like it's a similar style of, we're going to use design over talent to get home. Penn State has done really well, especially when there isn't a pure speed rusher that can challenge any of the tackles. How do you feel? You seem to feel really good about this, but how do you think there is a chance that or what's the percentage? What's the likelihood that their blitz packages do frustrate Penn State's offense in the passing game?
Well, first I'll say if I had to give two reasons how Boise State could win this, one of them would be their blitz game is just chaotic, and Drew Allar just gets really flustered by it. The offensive line, the running backs aren't picking up the blitz. That is how they win the game on defense. For me, there was little things. Last week against SMU, their Drew Allar got sacked when SMU brought a 7-up look, and they basically all came. And my problem was Drew Allar was hot off the guy on the right side. I mean, when you're hot off someone, that means Drew Allar knows, hey, if that guy comes, I got to get it out. I got to get it out because I don't have someone to block him. And he didn't even really register. The guy came and he was just kind of like, la, 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 la. And then like, oh crap. And then tried to run and then got sacked. Yeah. Well, my problem was we had a streak, and then Tyler Warren on a not super deep post, but a deep post over the middle of the field. Yeah. And Tyler Warren was an off coverage. Someone was 10 yards off of him, and they're in that 7-up look. Yep. I need hot routes. I need quick access routes where if they bring that 7-up look, Tyler, forget that deep post, 3 yards, sit, give me the ball, boom, and let Tyler Warren do what he does against the worst tackling team in all of college football. Yeah. That is what I need today. I need help for Drew Allar. Now, Drew Allar has to help himself out, but I need Koto Nicki to call a very quarterback-friendly game today, and he has in the past. I'm not saying he hasn't, but that's what we need out of Drew Allar. And I'm not necessarily saying we need to baby him or he needs but at the end of the day, we've seen both sides of him. We've seen the Oregon where he is just stone cold killer, doesn't care. Yeah. And then SMU looked really flustered. So how can we make sure it's more of that Oregon Drew Allar?
Can I give you a stat I found today? Because I was looking at this and I was thinking about, especially the game against SMU where that play aside, we both said to start the show, he was light years better under pressure than he was in a clean pocket. So I went and I looked at what does Drew Allar do against free runners in his face? Because that's what this defense is going to do. They're going to try and get free overload blitzes. They're trying to get guys not blocked at the quarterback because when you block them, they tend to stay blocked more than they get unblocked. And again, that is statistically, they win 10% of fewer of their matchups as pass rushers than Penn State's defense. That's a significant statistical difference. But Drew Allar, I'm just going to read this from the article I wrote today. You can read it at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Sign up for $1. You can read the whole thing. However, no Big Ten quarterback has done a better job at neutralizing unblocked pressure than Allar. Allar has 0 turnover-worthy plays with a free runner in his face. No fumbles, no interceptions. He's given up a sack on just 13.5% of those rushes and has produced a first down on nearly half of those plays, about 45% of those plays. So 45% of the time, it's a first down. And the rest of the time, he's mitigating the damage. So
against a free rusher, that's insane.
Free rusher.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
We talked about last year. I mean, his accuracy when he was under pressure was abysmal. And now he turns around and becomes one of the best quarterbacks in college football against pressure and against free rushers. And I mean, that is how Boise State, like we said, that's how they got to second in the nation in sacks. They were 5th in unblocked pressures in the country. What that means is, number one, your blitzes are probably good, but also number two, you're playing bad offensive line. Yeah. And so that, I mean, like I said, we could skin it a million different ways, but that the two main things: can we stop Ash and Genty? Yeah. Can we pick up the blitz? Yeah. I mean, that is truly what it is. Because I think if we pick up this blitz, I think Drew Allar shreds them to pieces.
He should.
I mean, badly, like badly.
It's almost a drinking game for me. Of like Amari Evans is in the slot, they're going to run a post, they're going to get a touchdown. Just every time, drink, there it is. And the scheme that they go against, I'm unloading the clip here of all the good stats I found in the last week and a half. They run cover 4, quarters, 4 deep players, which interact with deep routes like man coverage. They run that 40% of the time. Drew Allar has 5 of his 8 deep touchdowns against that coverage. Almost half his completions have come against quarters. The entire explosive passing game for Penn State, it lives and dies off of that pretty much. So if they don't get home and they're playing those aggressive blitzes, or if they don't blitz and they don't get pressure, either way, it feels like they're in a bad spot. And yet I still don't 100% trust this offense.
No, I don't think you ever can fully.
I wish I could. I really wish I could sit here and be like, yeah, 45 points. They're going to hang a 50 burger on this team. Like that is an outcome that could happen in terms of the talent and the schematic advantages that Penn State has. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't understand. There's something in the back of my mind that says, but Boise State will do something that will prevent that from happening. And I think part of it is something that Landon and I have been talking about for a little bit here. Their defensive line, especially the defensive tackles, at times I've looked at them and went, those guys could play in the Big Ten. And then there are other times I go, I don't recognize the people I saw in a previous game. It's the exact opposite of the Penn State offensive line from the SMU game, in a mirror situation. So to me, it also depends on the Boise State run game, who shows up there, because those guys, if they fight hard and mitigate Penn State's run game and put more of the game pressure on Allar, not necessarily just the actual blitzing pressure, I think that's where you could start to whittle away at Penn State's advantages. Do you think that's likely?
No.
Right. Right. I don't know.
Probably not. Like I said, for me in this game, everything has to go right for Boise State to win. That's when you're this big of an underdog. That is what it is. Their blitzes have to get home. They have to be playing good, defense with their DBs when they have those one-on-ones with Tyler Warren and Trey Wallace. On the defensive side, on the offensive side, Ashton Genty has to be explosive, over 150 yards, and they have to be hitting in the play-action game. They need all of that to work together, in my opinion, unless we just completely show up asleep. They need all of that at once. We don't need everything to work at once.
Right.
We can win if, as you saw, we didn't win the Big Ten championship. We were playing the number one team in the nation. The defense was really lacking. The offense came and almost won that game for us.
Yep.
So we have the ability to not be 100% on our game and win this game. Boise State is not afforded that same opportunity. They need to be on their P's and Q's.
I think that describes Penn State entirely this year. They haven't been on their game 100% at any point this year.
Is there a game where offense, defense was both? And it can't be Kent State. So I don't think so.
I don't.
Where it was like from the jump.
Washington?
Yeah, maybe Washington.
Maybe Washington.
What
was that? But that ended up being like 33-0 or 33-10 or something like that.
Yeah, no, they scored a little bit, but
because they were able to. They were able to in the second half get drives together because they put in the option quarterback. They pulled the ripcord on the game and put in a different quarterback. But yeah, it is generally the. I said this. I think it was in the middle of October or something like that. What if, just a thought experiment, what if Penn State plays every single game, including Kent State close? Every single game. And theoretically, obviously that game wasn't close. But nothing feels like a blowout, and yet they make the national championship. They just find a way to be in the game and win or lose. They've lost 2, so obviously they didn't win every single game. But here on out, they might be in every single game. If they win this game, they might be in the game against Notre Dame and Georgia. They might have disadvantages. They might have advantages. But I have a feeling it's going to be a close game in that scenario. They could go the entire year of never really they finally reached their potential and get to the threshold of the college football championship. This is a weird thing.
Not satisfy anybody, but be in the national championship.
And at the end of the year, everyone will be like, yeah, but did they play anybody?
We're going to be in the national championship after a 12-team playoff, but did we play anybody? Welcome to Penn State football, man.
Oh, man. Oh, I don't know that I'm rooting for it, but I think it would be funny. Couple minutes here left in this segment. When it comes to the run game, we got to get to what we've talked about before. I know you've mentioned it. It's out there in the universe now. Boise State's tackling issues. So there is a thing here too. Penn State recently has been much better. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen have been back into the groove. Tyler Warren is always good at breaking a couple tackles a game himself. But overall, they have at times, especially when you design the play, the ball carrier, it's his job to beat the free safety that is unblocked in the pressure. And they have struggled to do that. But what you've seen on film, does that change in this game to you?
No, not necessarily. Look, you have to. You talking about it as far as the Boise State offense?
It's Penn State's offense.
Oh, Penn State's offense
versus Boise State's defense.
Right. Like you're saying, making people miss and yes. Look, at the end of the day, like I said, you're playing the worst tackling defense in all of college football. The opportunities are going to be there. I've seen a lot of people in the chat are big time Nick Singleton game I'm hearing. So look, there is those opportunities. We should be getting Nick Singleton in space, and especially, I mean, Katron is that guy that will break those tackles and wear down a defense. If this and I've given the stat actually changed after Oregon. We were like 13-0 when Katron Allen rushed for over 80 yards in a game since his career here at Penn State. We are now, I think, like 13-1, maybe like 14-1. But we get Katron Allen going, and he just starts whittling away 6, 7, 8 yards. And they start to say, I don't want to tackle this dude anymore. Like, that's a world we can get into where we don't even really need Drew Allar. We're just dominating on the ground game. And, that safety doesn't want to come down and tackle Katron Allen anymore. And then Nick Singleton, and the biggest thing, too, we haven't really talked about is we talked about the blitzing in the pass game. The defense doesn't always know when it's a pass or a run. So they will blitz in the run game too. Now, that can generally end one of two ways. Obviously, there can just be a minimal gain, but normally a TFL, or you can crease it. That's what we call creasing the stunt, creasing the movement, where you catch it and the offensive lineman kind of carries it, and there ends up being a huge gaping hole because they wanted to blitz. They overcompensated one way. The offensive line did a great job picking it up, and then Nick Singleton 80 yards later. So there is both sides of that spectrum. Like I said, that's why for me, this game is really on this offensive line. Obviously, we need to stop Genty. Everybody knows that. Everybody in the entire universe has been trying to do that. But for me to really win this game, it's the Penn State offensive line.
So to the tackling on both sides, because we have some Boise State fans in the chat here. Welcome. Glad you're here. Hopefully you're not enraged by our analysis. I know you will be, but you can watch the full show because, yes, we've talked about the tackling issues on both sides. Here's what I just want to paint the picture. Yes, Penn State has some tackling issues in its secondary. Of the top 5 players, and I'm using this, top 6 players, I'm using this specifically, Penn State has 2 that have missed more than 10 tackles. Now let's go to Boise State. And let's look at how many that is. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players have missed 10 or more tackles, and all of their top 6 have missed 10 or more, including a player that's missed 21 tackles so far this season.
That's brutal. Is that what numbers? Is that their safety, number 21?
Yes.
Awful. Their safeties are horrible. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. I know Boise State fans. I didn't mean to do that. But the tackling that I saw from 0 and 21.
It's frustrating.
It was one of the most suspect things I've ever seen in my life. Let me just tell you, we watched how 0 was tackling.
Does he know that he has arms attached to his shoulders?
Clearly not. I don't think he does, but Katron Allen will show him that today, hopefully. And look, and we're talking Tyler Warren against these safeties. I really like that. I think we're going to be in a really good situation there.
So here's a question, because somebody asked me this, like going back to the Boise State front 7, is there anybody there who, are they Big Ten size was the question I got. And yes, generally they're about the same size as Penn State, but in terms of matchup, front 7 or secondary here, do you think there's anybody that can match up with Tyler Warren in the select times they'll go? Because they do play man coverage. They don't always play quarters. They will play man when they blitz and be aggressive. Is there anybody that can match up with Tyler Warren for the 1.2 seconds he needs to?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, the only person one-on-one this year that can stop Tyler Warren was Caleb Downs. No other team. I think Penn State was the only other team that had someone like Caleb Downs, and KJ Winston is no longer playing. He is headed to the NFL. So for me, no. The answer is no. Tyler Warren in one-on-one matchups, I really like that. I would really look, though, at Trey Wallace on the outside. And even when we do get that quarters, they will run press quarters. And what that means is basically man.
Yep.
And so we will get those one-on-one shots, specifically with Trey Wallace. Let's see if we can take advantage of it.
We're going to give our predictions coming up next. We'll also have a whole lot of other things coming up on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. That is including coming up next. We have, what do we got coming up next? I know we have coming up next. It is This Week in Penn State Sports here on the Tailgate Show on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, and Bigfoot Country Legends.
It's more than just football at Penn State. Here's This Week in Penn State Sports, brought to you by Bobby Ray Hall Lexus in Lewistown. Get ready to experience luxury like never before at Bobby Ray Hall Lexus of Lewistown. We are Nittany Valley's award-winning Lexus dealership at 425 Electric Avenue. Visit us on the web at BobbyRayHallLexusofLewistown.com.
2024 is almost over. As New Year's Eve arrives, so does the hardware. It may have been a week ago, but we still want to shout out the NCAA D1 women's volleyball champion, Penn State Nittany Lions. Head coach Katie Schumacher-Cawley became the first female coach to ever lift the trophy, doing so alongside her star-studded team in prime time against Louisville in Kentucky a week ago. Jess Merzick, Izzy Stark & Co. led the team to the mountaintop, and 2025 awaits for the number one team in all of women's collegiate volleyball. Mike Rhodes and the Penn State men's basketball team is looking to do what Schumacher-Cawley & Co. just accomplished, winning a title. Ace Baldwin made sure 2024 ended on a high with an 86-66 victory over Penn in the Bryce Jordan Center. The Nittany Lions kick off 2025 at home against Northwestern on Thursday before heading to Philadelphia for the Palestra matchup with the Indiana Hoosiers on Sunday. The Lady Lions, however, ended 2024 on a sour note, losing 4 out of their last 5 games after an 8-0 start to the campaign. Carolyn Keeger's crew is gearing up for a New Year's Day matchup bounce-back game against the top 25 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes in the Jordan Center at 1 p.m. It wouldn't be a true This Week in Penn State Sports without highlighting the human highlight reel himself, Saquon Barkley. Number 26 cracked the 2,000-yard mark in a win for the Eagles over the Dallas Cowboys, taking his season total to 2,005 rushing yards on the year. Barkley is the 9th player to eclipse 2,000 rushing yards in one season and sits only 100 behind Eric Dickerson's all-time mark of 2,105 yards in the regular season. Saquon can break Dickerson's record in the final game of the regular season as Philly takes on Barkley's former team, the New York Giants, at the Link at 1 p.m. on Sunday. That was This Week in Penn State Sports. Back to the Tailgate Show in a moment.
Holidays are here.
Fitz, how do you think this plays out, and what's your final score prediction?
That is a good question. But while I do that, I'm going to filibuster here and say Stacey Collins coaches these Boise State special teams. You didn't ask me about that.
I did not.
I love Stacey. Everybody that's around Stacey loves Stacey. I mean, there's no getting around it. He's one of the coolest guys that has come through here. And his S&P Plus has Boise State's special teams at 69th overall. Which isn't great, but Penn State's 81st. So, I don't think this is a matchup where special teams is the be-all, end-all of the game, but obviously it can have a factor in any way. Zion Tracy returning punts. That might be just one to keep an eye on. I'm just very curious. I'm looking for our predictions here.
Don't worry, I've got a graphic for you.
You got a graphic for me? Perfect. There it is. Penn State 38, SMU 24. I think Genty gets his yards. I think he does a really, does what he does, and that's get the ball a lot and turn it into positive momentum. I would not be shocked if he broke a long one. That is just the way that his game plays out. He's a fantastic player. He was in New York for a reason, and they're going to be, just sort of keeping an eye on him all day. I do think that Penn State has the opportunity to score points. I think they've had the opportunity to make big plays, to bust a couple of runs, which have been kind of few and far between this year. So I'm excited to see how Penn State makes things work. Again, how do you sort of get away from what you were down the stretch with not force feeding Bo, but making Bo a part of that offense? How does that change? How does that mean more direct snaps to running backs? Does that mean more direct Tyler Warren work? I think we see a lot of Tyler Warren. I think we see a lot of sort of that creativity that gets results more so than the creativity that, gets people all, flustered mess in the post-game show. But no, I like Penn State. That's a lot of points, man, for a national quarterfinal game. 11 points or 10.5 points or whatever it is. That's a lot of points, but I think Penn State has the ability to get that done. Now, I will say this. I'm a bit worried that the national pundits are so on Penn State's side here. If you look, it's almost unanimous what they think is going to happen. And you think about West Virginia, you think about some of these other games, and they aren't typically unanimously right. So I think I'm a little bit worried about that. But at the same time, Penn State's got a real opportunity ahead of them. Genty will get his, but at the same time, I think Penn State has a lot of weapons to lean back on both sides of the ball.
Everyone is predicting 30s or more for the Penn State offense in this game here in the chat. I won't read all through all of them here. Steven makes me laugh. He says, my prediction is whatever T. Frank says. Oh, that is not a great, that hasn't always worked out. Let's just say that.
Cross Acre Campus in Big Valley, PA. Award-winning residential, personal care, skilled nursing, rehab, and memory care for older adults.
Welcome back to the Penn State Tailgate Show, powered by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, celebrating more than 40 years of service to the community. Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships has a vehicle to fit your budget and transportation needs. Home of the $1,000 lowest price guarantee with 20 locations throughout Pennsylvania. I was watching Illinois and South Carolina attempt football, despite the refs' best interests earlier. But Michigan 19, Alabama 13. Thoughts on this game quickly here?
Yeah, it was an interesting watch. Obviously, Michigan came out and just decimated Alabama's offense. So he had basically there was 3 turnovers, a 4th turnover on downs. I don't know if Kalen DeBoer is going to get run out of town for that one, but it was not a great watch. And shout out all the SEC talking heads. Get shown up.
Yeah. More around the Big Ten with Ohio State and Oregon coming up tomorrow, but now we're going to go back to another commercial break and come back with our predictions, because the only thing that matters is Penn State Boise State tonight.
Fitz, how do you think this plays out, and what's your final score prediction?
That is a good question. But while I do that, I'm going to filibuster here and say Stacey Collins coaches these Boise State special teams. You didn't ask me about that.
I did not.
I love Stacey. Everybody that's around Stacey loves Stacey. I mean, there's no getting around it. He's one of the coolest guys that has come through here. And his S&P Plus has Boise State's special teams at 69th overall. Which isn't great, but Penn State's 81st. So I don't think this is a matchup where special teams is the be all end all of the game, but obviously it can have a factor in any way. Zion Tracy returning punts. That might be just one to keep an eye on. I'm just very curious. I'm looking for our predictions here.
Don't worry, I've got a graphic for you.
You got a graphic for me? Perfect. There it is. Penn State 38, SMU 24. I think Genty gets his yards. I think he does a really, does what he does, and that's get the ball a lot and turn it into positive momentum. I would not be shocked if he broke a long one. That is just the way that his game plays out. He's a fantastic player. He was in New York for a reason, and they're going to be, just sort of keeping an eye on him all day. I do think that Penn State has the opportunity to score points. I think they've had the opportunity to make big plays, to bust a couple of runs, which have been kind of few and far between this year. So I'm excited to see how Penn State makes things work. Again, how do you sort of get away from what you were down the stretch with not force feeding Bo, but making Bo a part of that offense? How does that change? How does that mean more direct snaps to running backs? Does that mean more direct Tyler Warren work? I think we see a lot of Tyler Warren. I think we see a lot of sort of that creativity that gets results more so than the creativity that, gets people all, flustered mess in the post-game show. But no, I like Penn State. That's a lot of points, man, for a national quarterfinal game. 11 points or 10.5 points or whatever it is. That's a lot of points, but I think Penn State has the ability to get that done. Now, I will say this. I'm a bit worried that the national pundits are so on Penn State's side here. If you look, it's almost unanimous what they think is going to happen. And you think about West Virginia, you think about some of these other games, and they aren't typically unanimously right. So I think I'm a little bit worried about that. But at the same time, Penn State's got a real opportunity ahead of them. Genty will get his, but at the same time, I think Penn State has a lot of weapons to lean back on both sides of the ball.
Everyone is predicting 30s or more for the Penn State offense in this game here in the chat. I won't read all through all of them here. Steven makes me laugh. He says, my prediction is whatever T. Frank says. Oh, that is not a great, that hasn't always worked out. Let's just say that. My prediction is 35-21. Penn State beats SMU. Yeah, that's good. It's the end of the year. So 35, what did I say? 35-21 Penn State. I think that in this particular game, in this situation, part of the mathematics is going to come down to Penn State's ability, as we said, to get out to a fast start and then be able to mitigate action.
Welcome back to the Tailgate Show. Time to give our predictions. I just recited what the intro just said. Appreciate you allowing me my word fluff before we get to it, but I can't hold this guy back any longer. What's your prediction?
38-10.
38-10.
Yep. Boise State.
That is worse than what was on the rundown for Boise State.
Yeah, it was. You saw the rundown. I think I changed I think I took a couple of points off Boise State. Ashton Genty he's going to get his. We've said that he's the best running back, one of the best of all time in college football. I think we will neutral. I think this defensive line. I like Zane Durant. I like Dennis Sutton's matchups against the left guard and the right tackle. On the flip side, Drew Allar and company. I think if we can pick up this, and that this score is betting on the fact that we are going to pick up their blitz packages.
Yeah.
If we can pick that up, the running backs and the offensive line, Drew Allar's going to have a fun day out there.
Mike Scatena in the chat, another regular here on the YouTube show. Appreciate you donating to the channel. Appreciate everyone who's been in the chat, including the Boise State fans who are here to cause some ruckus. I mean, it's a tailgate show, right? So nothing like a little bit of smack talk before a football game. Let's just keep it all nice and friendly. So far, I think it's been all right. Luckily, we only have a couple minutes here left as people are starting to get a little more rowdy the closer we get to game time. But Mike, he's here. He says, Happy New Year's, fellas. Thanks for all the content on your channels. As long as Penn State wins the turnover battle, they win the game comfortably. Cheers. Appreciate that, Mike. Give everyone your channel. So you were here. We haven't really talked. We talked about the fact that you do these things. Where can people go find you?
You can find me at Landon Tengwall, all over Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you get your stuff. I'm constantly doing film breakdowns that'll be out during the game. I'm live tweeting during the game at Landon Tengwall on Twitter. I also post a lot of videos. I just hold my phone up to the TV screen and I rewind. So I take away the fact that I get to watch the game live, and I just get a lot of videos out there for you guys. So if you are watching anything and you say, damn, I want to see that again, it'll probably be up on my Twitter. So check it out at Landon Tengwall. Yeah,
Paul P. Browning, Paul Bunyan Browning, he was trying so hard he didn't make it to the end of the show. I got 35-21.
Okay.
30. I think I can't remember. It's 35 or 38 was my official prediction, but somewhere in the high 30s. And Ashton Jeanty is going to be a good football player. They're going to marry the run, the pass game pretty well. But again, like we talked about, it has been a pretty strong favor in a lot of different areas for Penn State, from the analysis standpoint, the film breakdown standpoint, the recruiting standpoint, from the team building standpoint. This is nothing against Boise State. These are just the facts and realities of college football that have existed for, 50, 60 years. Like, this is the same conversation we had against SMU. That team was an AAC team until last year. And SMU has historically great, glory years with the Pony Express and all the things that we're doing now that they used to do then. And from an NIL perspective, if we're going to call it that. But you institutionally have advantages when you are in the largest, strongest, most profitable conferences. And when you aren't and you want to build a program, these are the mountains you have to climb. So, Boise State, this is obviously your shot on the mountaintop to topple a king in college football. And I know they're not, I know Penn State has not won a national championship, but when you talk about the top teams that matter, the names, the programs, the people that get Landon Tengwalls to go to their football team, Penn State's on a list of about 12 teams. So those are baked in advantages, and those are the cold, hard facts that we see when we watch the film.
Yep. And we actually, T-Frank, we forgot one thing. I wanted to say Happy New Year. What? Here you go. You give me a little bit. Go ahead. Get yours.
No, I can't.
Oh, it doesn't. See, why'd I give him my gun? What's going on? All right. Well,
I did not expect that. This show ends. That's amazing.
That wraps up. Hopefully not the final blue-white, Penn State tailgate show here.
We gotta get going.
We got a little mess to clean up here in the studio.
The official tailgate show, pregame show of Penn State football, is coming up in about 45 seconds. We'll be back. I have my live postgame show immediately following the game. Landon will have his analysis this weekend. For everyone here at Seven Mountains Media, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Enjoy the game.
Love you guys. Appreciate you. Let's get this win. Happy New Year.